Hey Gooners, Daddy's home. Did you miss me? I'm Draco Self-Important, and I think you should listen to me. Today, you're gonna listen to me talk about the difference between Zionism and anti-Semitism through the framework of the girlies fighting. Bad Empanada and Ryan Beard are displaying some really quality examples of leftist infighting that I think we can use to talk about anti-Semitism, Zionism, and the way that bigotry is different in the U.S. versus globally, and how that has, on a very different sort of topic and situation affected my life. So we'll tie we'll tie it all back to some Draco Self-Important history. If you're looking for the "Where the hell have you been" video, that's coming, but this is not it. I want to dive right into making, for real content, not just personal wham wham videos, because no one gives a shit about those. Most especially me, honestly, most of the time. But I get way more hyped about the videos where I actually talk about shit that's like cool. Not that not that these kids fighting on the internet is cool. And when I say kids, I literally mean kids in reference to me, not children. These are both adults. I'm sure both over 21. I don't know specifically how old either of them are. Just, the looking at him, hearing him talk, I would guess that Bad Empanada is pretty significantly older than Ryan. Ryan Beard. I as if I'm on a first name basis with Ryan Beard, but whatever. For the sake of brevity, we're just gonna go with Ryan as but Ryan, I think, is might be sub 25. We're talking someone in their early 20s, maybe mid 20s. This is a young person, and one of the things that, well, let's first explain why the girlies are fighting. Bad Empanada and Ryan Beard fighting because Ryan says that Senor Empanada, as it were, is anti-Semitic, and Bad Empanada says that Ryan is a Zionist. And I, as someone who is a fan of both of these creators, disagree on both of those fucking counts. They're both wrong. Bad Empanada is most certainly not anti-Semitic in any way, shape, or form. I think that his perspective on what anti-Semitism is, and versus, this is where we get into the differences between the global perspective on anti-Semitism and the American perspective on anti-Semitism. And I'm sure that there are other countries that fall in line with how, because America has, however you view it, a pretty substantial effect on the global stage. So, we are definitely in a situation where, like, the American attitude on the anti-Semitism in this case, or any forms of bigotry, is going to have an effect on other places in the world. But, this is something that we'll get into that in a little bit more detail momentarily. But, the claim then by Bad Empanada that Ryan is a Zionist, I think now is not the case. I think that prior to now, much like a lot of the country, Ryan didn't fucking know enough to actually have been one way or the other. Um, but honestly, with some of the tweets that I saw in the video that Bad Empanada put out today, no, I don't think it was a tweet. I think it was a comment in someone's YouTube comments or some shit, um, about iDubbbz unfollowing Ryan Beard because they were critical of Hamas at some point in some way, and thinking that that was funny, which, that gives some real heavy Zionist vibes, right? And this, I think, was like 9 months ago. I know that as, the American educational system. Hi, if you're not American, let me just break this down for you. It's pretty well understood that it sucks. It's not just that it sucks. It is constructed, and this may be news to some Americans as well. It is constructed in order to paint a very specific narrative, and to completely obfuscate huge portions of history in order to maintain this idea of American exceptionalism. This idea that America is the super coolest, only real representation of democracy, only real representation of freedom, which it's like, I'm not getting into the weeds on those topics here and now. I got other shit to talk about, but, it's propaganda, right? And to be fair and or balanced, as it were, propaganda is not always bad, right? Propaganda is literally just like political messaging. Political messaging shouldn't be the curriculum for your history classes in public schooling. That's a problem. Propaganda shouldn't be education, right? Like propaganda, you can definitely, put things out into the ether as the government, whatever, like, but yeah. So that is why a lot of Americans have no fucking clue. And it's like, yes, definitely, we can educate ourselves, but like, let me be real with you. If you look at some of the videos on this channel, you'll know that I have mental health struggles out the ass. I definitely have, I have not been the most globally aware person in the world. I mean, I've tried to not be complete fucking ostrich or whatever, but like, I'm not an expert on global politics. I'm just not. But, with that being said, I have learned more about the history of Israel and the creation of Israel, because I knew that it was like after the war, they were like, oh man, where are we going to put all of these Jewish people that were in these concentration camps? Let's put them over here. And basically, the way that it's presented, when you're taught this in school, is it's presented to you like there was just like this big old plot of land that was like available, and there. Also, I think the answer to where to put those people would have been back in their fucking homes, send them back to the countries that they came from. Why the fuck did we need to send them off somewhere else? And this is where we get into Zionism, right? This is where we get into this belief that the Jews, as it were, are entitled to a homeland, and the prophecy and the this is some Christian death cult bullshit. It when I and anyone else who is speaking in good faith is talking about a Zionist, right? The vast majority of the people that I am talking about, and that, like, I'm wearing my Hasan merch. Hi, my John Brown hunting club. Love it. Um, I might make a John Brown video at some point, but um, when we're talking about Zionist, we're mostly talking about Christians, because the number of Christian Zionists who are, basically require the Jews to go to their homeland in order for revelations to come to pass, and are therefore in support of doing absolutely everything necessary up to and including eliminating an entire population of people in order to make sure that that happens. Um, th those people are mostly Christian. There certainly are people who are, fucking Jewish and are also Zionists, right? Like, obviously, the people living in Israel, especially people who went there, like birthright citizenship, right? They weren't born there; they came there because, if you're Jewish, cool story, come on in. I don't know what the official rules are, what the percentages, what have you, but it's intended to be an ethno-state. And the Nazis were trying to create an ethno-state. And the position of the Nazis, right, if we will remember, was that the Aryan race was the superior race, um, you know, like, and that um, all of the problems that they had were caused by the Jews, right? Like, scapegoating bullshit, which the United States at this point is super great at this scapegoating bullshit. Scapegoating is perhaps like the biggest part of American politics. Hello, as a transformer myself, yeah, we get scapegoated a fucking lot. And also, the Nazis did the same shit. Because when you acknowledge the existence of gender outside of the, Western colonial dichotomy that we're presented with, then you are giving people the notion that they have freedom of choice and freedom of behavior, and that they don't necessarily need to conform to the behaviors that the powers that be want us all to conform to, so that we stay in our little boxes and we continue to make money for them. Every goddamn video I make comes back to capitalism, patriarchy, and white supremacy. But in this case, we start getting into the supremacy concept shifts a bit, right? White supremacy becomes, more about the Western global colonial supremacy, more than it is about whiteness, right? When we are talking in the United States, within America, about white supremacy, we're talking in most cases about, visible physical skin color as the predominant factor. But when we're talking about white supremacy globally, it's more in-group, out-group, right? To the point that there are definitely people, who would be considered white outside of the U.S. that then and additionally, the idea of whiteness and Jewishness, and whether or not being Jewish is a race in and of itself is a whole thing that gets into that just becomes some weird anti-Semitic fucking, because race is all fucking made up and it's all bullshit anyway. There are white Jewish people. There are white everybody. Like there are virtually no populations that don't have some people in them that basically just look like this, like light skin, brown hair, like, you know. There's not every population in the world has a herd of, you know, blondes or redheads or whatever, but definitely, like, they're you know, they're white people in on every fucking continent. We're a pariah. We're everywhere. Pariah is not the word I was looking for. I don't know what I was. Whatever. I am nothing but digressions. So, Ryan Beard, 3 years ago, made a video about Trisha Paytas, where they called Trisha Paytas a Nazi. And in this video, they said, because Trisha Paytas had said some shit about not liking Israel, and that was like a step below saying that you didn't like Jewish people, and that you know, who else didn't like Israel, and then shows a picture of Adolf Hitler, which, like, you know, not knowing that Israel didn't exist at that point in history, pretty big L, which, you know, in this whole conversation prior to Bad Empanada making a video about Ryan where he calls this out, Ryan says, like, yeah, 3 years ago I made this video, I'm an idiot, like, if you want to point that out, cool, but obviously, like, I've learned and grown since then, you know. And so for me, that's where we get into the like, well, this is where Bad Empanada is wrong, because he's saying, like, well, there's no way you could have possibly. And I, as a middle-aged man, in the past 3 years have had massive amounts of personal growth and learned a shit ton about all different areas of global politics and shit, you know, all kinds of different topics that I didn't know a goddamn thing about, because, like, you know, you're always learning things, and you're learning things that become relevant to your life, because you can't know everything about everything all the time. It's like when something comes to your attention and you take the time to, like, learn about it, or, you know, something comes to your attention and it becomes very clear that it is very consequential and you cannot fucking avoid it, and you learn about it because you have to, and somewhere in between, you know what I mean? Like, so this idea that in 3 years' time, this person could not have gone from not understanding that Hitler would not have been mad at a country that didn't exist. I know that they have already owned up to that, but that's, man, that is a, like, come on, guy. Come. And, you know, watching the clip of that video, which I remember, I watched that video when it came out, because I was, like, all into the stupid Trisha Paytas fucking drama back in the day. I love slop, man. I don't know what to tell you. But looking at that, Ryan was basically a fetus in that video. They look to be about 12 years old, and I know that they're older than that, but, you know, yeah, if this kid is 25 years old, I would be surprised, right? And I, you know, if I'm guessing, I don't know, Bad Empanada is like 33. I don't fucking know. At least 28, right? Like, we're talking about someone who, and also we're talking about someone who political science seems to be kind of the gig. Bad Empanada has made countless videos for years that go into massive amounts of detail about, you know, like, communist theory and shit. So obviously, there's going to be a vast difference in the knowledge bases here. But like, to suggest that he can't have learned, that they can't have learned anything is, but on the other hand, for Ryan Beard to be shouting that Bad Empanada is anti-Semitic, you know, typey shouting, not literally shouting, although the video may show up, who knows. I honestly, I hope not. I hope that they just kick back and are like, no, I'm gonna just take the L on this, because doubling and tripling down is not the solution here. Ryan, much like Jake Doolittle, if you were around for any of that nonsense, uh, was very much an H3 stan. You will find videos on this very channel. Hell, one of the very earliest videos on this channel that was any kind of actual content, like before I started making videos in earnest at all, was a video of me yelling at Vosh for his ableist language. I'm wearing a Teddy Fresh hoodie, you know, so like, and not for nothing, and I may have mentioned this before, and I probably will say it again, I have a Teddy Fresh jacket that I fucking love, that like is not identifiably Teddy Fresh unless you know that it doesn't have any logos or anything on the outside. And I, you know, I'm just having a real separate the art from the artist moment here, because I'm still going, like, I paid entirely too much for that coat. The fucking snaps are falling off of the fucking thing. And you know, they shouldn't, like, I don't know, it's not exactly what I would call well constructed. Also, the hoodie from that fucking Vosh video is faded as shit. Like, it did not hold up well in the laundering, whatever. But, you know, I also was a subscriber to H3, like, so I also, although not a baby growing up watching it like Ryan was, because I think that Ryan had said that they'd watched Ethan Klein shit, you know, since they were a teenager. I was absolutely a fan. My coming to start watching Hasan was because of Ethan Klein. I came about all this shit, you know, because I came to Ethan Klein because of watching Vosh, because I watched him cover the Sam Cedar thing. The Sam Cedar, fucking, oh god, I can't remember the name of the shitty, Steven Crowder, yeah. I'm like, what's the name of the stupid guy who argues with college students? And then I realized I have just described like half of the right-wing YouTube, because all they do is go argue with college students. Like, that's their entire fucking spiel. At any rate, goddamn, I lost my whole ass train there because I got off on a whole tangent about right-wing people. Oh, yeah. No, I got led from Vosh to H3 because of the Sam Cedar situation. And then from there, when they started doing leftovers, then I started actually watching Hasan. Because Vosh has, you know, agreed with Hasan on many points throughout the years, but has shit-talked him. And like, I would catch Hasan shit here and there, but I am not a Twitch watcher. Everything I watch is on YouTube. Because like, I don't like to watch the streaming. I want to see it cut. I want to, you know, get to the good bits. I don't want to sit there while you know, futz with your keyboard and shit. Like, I don't, I'm not, you know, sometimes maybe if it's a creator that I'm like super stoked about, or like if it's someone that I know personally and I hang out in their chat or whatever, but like, it's, I don't know, not exactly my jam. But, you know, Ryan Beard is known to have been an H3 stan, and Bad Empanada is suggesting that Ryan cannot, like, pry himself away from the stanhood of it all, um, as far as the, wanting to say that they're anti-Zionist while expressing some, from the outside, pretty objectively Zionist sentiment. Uh, Being critical of Hamas, it's like, okay, but why? Like, we can be critical of the way that radical uprisings happen against, oppressive governments all day, right? When you get to a point that violence becomes what the people believe to be the only option, um, shit gets weird. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, woohoo, yay, Hamas, but the shit started as just a regular political party. It's not like Hamas started as a terrorist organization, but they were elected into office, like, I think, like 2006. Like, we're talking like damn near 20 years ago. It may have been a different, like, but it was a long fucking time ago. And most of the people who are alive in the fucking Gaza Strip now, most of these Palestinian people were not fucking alive, let alone voting age adults, to have voted any of these fucking people in, right? And at this point, they have, killed, Israel has killed the leadership, different members of leadership of Hamas so many fucking times, and that's not, like, Hamas is not the issue here. The issue is that Israel has declared loudly and proudly, many different Israeli officials, that they will not stop, regardless of the release of hostages, that the goal is to get the Palestinian people the fuck out of Gaza one way or another. And they would prefer to just eliminate their existence, clearly, as evidenced by the actions that have happened for the past nearly 2 years. This is not something that started on October 7th. This is something that has been going on for the better part of a century. This is not a new conflict. If you do not understand why October 7th happened to begin with, you cannot look at this with any kind of an objective lens. If all you're looking at is there was a terrorist attack against, at a fucking concert or festival or what the fuck ever, and that is the entirety of your viewpoint, and you're only... It's an apartheid. It is, there are people who were... There are people who are very, very, very familiar with South Africa during apartheid who are like, yep, and it's meeting all of, it's... I have described Netanyahu as Hitler 2.0. I've said Hitler 2.0 Jewish edition. I think that is inaccurate. I think it's Hitler 2.0 Zionist edition, because Jewish has nothing to do with it, which that I've said as well, that I don't believe that the Israeli government represents Jews any more than I think that, the Saudi Arabian government represents Muslims, or that, what is a fucking Christian country? Is Ghana Christian? I don't know what. Fucking Congo, one of the, a fucking Christian country, the United States, what the fuck ever, it represents Christianity. You know what I mean? Like, or, India and Hinduism, etc., etc., etc. Like, that's because I can look at myself and I can look at all of the people who have been screaming from the time that this shit started, oh my god, they're murdering babies. They're murdering babies with weapons that we are giving them, that we are paying for, that we are supplying. Like, why are we doing this? What this has to? Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! What the fuck is going on? Right? Um, there have been people who have recognized and who have been shouting about this shit the whole time. But the impression is that America backs it. And a lot of people in America do, obviously. How many people have lost their jobs and shit and been called anti-Semitic for calling out Israel for committing a fucking genocide? And now it's like, oh damn, they have killed like kind of a lot of babies. And it's I I'm not going to be mad at people for coming around, right? Like, if you don't know what you don't know, and if you are only presented with what you're getting in little clips on the news, and you're not, watching the right people, basically, if you're not seeking out either media that isn't originating in the United States or fucking Hasan, like, you're not going to get an accurate picture of what's going on, or at least you wouldn't up until, I guess, now they've finally started to, get with reality. You're going to get this complete whitewash bullshit, Israel has a right to defend itself fucking propaganda, you know. It's yeah. And propaganda, again, propaganda in and of itself is not necessarily a problem, but why is there Israeli propaganda being pumped through American journalism, right? American media, not necessarily like actual journalists. I think a lot of actual journalists have been like, guys, for quite a while. And, Israel has murdered a lot of journalists and a lot of aid workers. And, I mean, it's par for the course. I talked a fucking year ago when I went and did that mosque visit because all the motherfuckers in my comments were going off about how fucking bigoted Muslims are as a people, and the whole pinkwashing of the fucking conflict and they'd be throwing your gay ass off rooftops and blah 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 blah. And I've said before, you really can't worry about human rights like that when you're being fucking bombed. Like, when we stop trying to eliminate the Palestinian people, like, generally, like, when we can stop murdering them, then we can see if we can try to get some better civil rights for queer Palestinians. But right now, everyone is fighting over bags of rice. So I don't really think that anyone is super fucking concerned. So, priorities, people. Fucking priorities. Like, needing a new faucet when your house is on fire. Like, yeah, the faucet is dripping, but not fucking enough, So, I've talked before on my channel about the time that I got dumped for being racist against white people. Give a little more background on that story. This was in 2020. This was, the height of the BLM movement. Oh, Alice, are you gonna come get all up in our business? That would be... Hello, Alice. oh, he's gonna fully just attack my head while I'm just gonna let him do it. It's fine. It's fine. Enjoy the cat content, y'all. Um, but in the height of BLM, I was dating this dude who um, gave like $2,000 a month to whatever the fuck charity at any given month. Because this was someone who was making like $160,000 a year doing coding. Okay, can you not actually bathe directly in my ear though? Thanks. Um, and so wanted to like give back, and so gave to all different charities, like for net neutrality a lot of the time, and the reasonable causes that I were and I suggested donating to a BLM charity, and they were like, no. And I'm like, okay. And so we get into this whole conversation about how they had experienced racism as a white person traveling globally. Especially in Japan and other places in Asia, just horrendous, like literal oppression, because they were living there and working there, and when you get paid less, you have less jobs available to you. You have people harassing you, yada yada yada, because you are in fact a minority in that situation. It's and I tried to explain, like, okay, cool, but like when we're talking about racism in the United States, and we're talking about BLM, and it it's not the same, because we're talking about the in-group out-group, right? We're talking about the dominant culture. We're talking about, in this case, a colonial power. We're talking like this whole systematic, and to say that because other places in the world that system is not in place and those things do not happen, that's not like true or valid or real, doesn't make any fucking sense, right? Because it is the reality for a gigantic chunk of land with millions of fucking people on it, and like, or billions I don't know how many people are anywhere. There are billions of people in the United States, right? Because there's like 8 billion people in the world, right? I don't know, whatever. There's a lot of motherfuckers here, right? And in the reality in which we live, there is white supremacy. There is a massive amount of racism against basically anyone who isn't perceived as being white at any given moment. Throughout American history, who has been perceived as being white and not has changed drastically. Jewish people among them, if we're talking like, and like Israel classifies people as either Jew or Arab, right? And as if there are not Arab Jews. Like, this is it's all fucking like arbitrary fucking bullshit. It's all fucking socially constructed. It's all just a way to put people into boxes to encourage infighting so that we don't look up. It's the same shit I have been like, all right, all of it, all of this gender war nonsense, all of the fucking anti fucking trans shit, all of it. It is all just intended to have people being, focusing on a scapegoat and or fighting amongst ourselves. It's been said that the gender war has become more virulent and more negatively impacting than racism in the United States at this point. And that may well be true. The way that men and women look at each other as if like they're on opposing sides rather than they're trying to like find a partner to the straights are not okay. You know what I'm saying? Um, and it's like we have so many fucking problems, but the relationship crumbled like the next day because this dude just could not hang with the fact that I was like, you cannot be racist against white people in the United States. Like, you cannot be racist against the dominant power. And that's where, one of Ryan Beard's statements about why they believe that Bad Empanada is anti-Semitic is because Bad Empanada says that there is not anti-Semitism anymore in a realistic way. And that is something that I understand why he thinks that, but I do not agree, at least not from an American perspective, living here. And, knowing about the harassment, violence, etc. And also, Bad Empanada does acknowledge. I'm sorry, the dog got up and I was just making sure he was not going to eat some of my belongings, because that's often a thing that he is wont to do. But Bad Empanada is suggesting that anti-Semitism doesn't exist because at this point, there isn't a lot of systemic oppression that happens to Jewish people in the Western world. And as far as, in the Eastern world, Middle East, the global South, there just are not a lot of Jewish people there, in great part because of the actions of Zionists through the formation of Israel. There have. I'm not going to get into that too terribly much because, quite frankly, like, that's when we start to get out of my depth. But in the United States, anti-Semitism is complicated because it is used both as a scapegoating tool, right, as a way to weaponize any kind of dissent against the Israeli government as dissent against Jewish people as a population of, the religion, right? Because Israel goes out of its way to conflate Jewishness with Israeliness. And that's not how this works. You very much can be Jewish and not be Israeli. Apparently you can't be Israeli if you're not Jewish, which is sort of part of the fucking problem here, because it's an ethno-state. But, to get back to the America of it all, because doesn't everything always, the weaponization of anti-Semitism in order to vilify anyone who is protesting as a terrorist supporter, or just flat out as a terrorist, it's just, it's a real thing that happens. But also, there's still a pretty significant population in and out of the government of the United States of people who, think that Jewish people are a question to be answered. And so, in that way, anti-Semitism is very much alive and well. There are organizations who are very much, and I mean, granted, a lot of the people who have this, very extreme hatred have, to their knowledge, never seen a goddamn Jewish person in their life, right? Like, some backwoods, rural. Yeah. But, we have situations where there have been synagogues attacked and, in the name of anti Semitism, because anti Semitism is conflated with anti Zionism, and also because there are people who are just still fucking Nazi style anti Semitic. Like, I don't know what to tell you, man. It is a thing that still happens. And, his contention was like, well, name another minority that isn't more oppressed. This does not need to be the oppression Olympics. We can understand that anti-Semitism is weaponized and, is not what the United States government or Israeli government make it out to be, and still acknowledge that, like, it does exist, it does affect people's lives. Do I think that it is anywhere near the, fucking dog and pony show that the Trump administration is making out of every fucking college protest right now? No. It's a total fucking excuse. Fucking 24 months ago, we would have been dealing with people who were just as likely. What the hell did that dog just pick up? Hold on just a second. Oh, okay, no, that's fine. Just as likely to have, defended, like, Nazi speakers at college campuses for freedom of speech as they are now to condemn protesters at college campuses using their freedom of speech as terrorists and, trying to, and at times successfully deporting people, and, like, it's, yeah. So anti-Semitism is being used as a weapon, and in the process of this, Jewish people are getting caught in the crossfire, and that's kind of always how it's been, in the United States. It's just, it's the whole situation is just so goddamn frustrating. And, it's especially frustrating to have people who, are ostensibly on the same side fighting over this shit. Why, like, Bad Empanada, he's said some banana shit. Especially, that dude on Twitter is just, like, woo. Like, just the mouth running just does not stop, right? But that does not mean that he doesn't have a good understanding of his theory and his history. That doesn't mean he doesn't know what he's talking about. No. Go lay down. No. Enough. I'm doing something. Go. Go. Sorry. Yeah. Doesn't mean that he doesn't know what he's talking about. Doesn't mean that he's not well-intentioned. He's a little, Hasan would describe him as a psychopath, right? Like, he's nuts. And, he gets labeled as being a bad guy because he's kind of fucking out there. He's incredibly hyperbolic in his language. He makes me look like I never use hyperbole, like the comparison. And wow, if hyperbole is basically the only way I know how to speak. So it's, but that being said, the idea that anti-Semitism globally is what it is in the United States, it really, like, I don't think that it is. I think there probably are some countries where there are similar attitudes, but I think in most places, either people do not give a shit, or they're like, oh, that's fine, whatever, like, or they're regarded in the same way that anyone of the non-dominant religion in that country would be regarded, and the fact that they're Jewish does not give them any kind of extra levels of oppression. And that is Bad Empanada's point, and I don't disagree with that. That doesn't change the fact that it does exist in America. But to suggest that anti-Semitism is a problem for Israeli Jews in Israel, the only reason that that is a problem is because the Israeli government is conflating Judaism with the Israeli government. Because if, we could separate that shit out a little bit, and acknowledge that those are not the same thing, then perhaps people would be a little more forgiving of the Israeli people, amongst the... I assume that the people who are being anti-Semitic within Israel are fucking Palestinians, I guess. Like, who the fuck else? Because the whole fear is like, well, if we all disarm and we let Palestinians continue to live here, what are they going to do to us after all that we've done to them? And it's like, well, maybe you should have thought of that before, one. And two, that's not... I really don't think that is the goal. I think the goal is just to have people fucking survive. I think that Hasan has said it, and I can't disagree. One phone call, and this shit would be done. It could have been one phone call from Biden. Now it could be one phone call from Trump. All it takes is the United States stopping the funds on the weapons, and the shit's done. But the idea that there is real anti-Semitism in Israel is bananas. It's a Jewish supremacist ethno-state. No, there's not anti-Semitism. They're committing a genocide. They have a massive defense dome. They have a massive budget that, I am in part paying for. That, like... Yeah. I don't know, man. The whole Ethan Klein thing, just generally, because Bad Empanada thinks that Ryan Beard will never come around because he will never be able to let go of his, like, emotional attachment to Ethan Klein. And, that Ryan, that they'll never be able to disavow completely Ethan Klein. And, I do, and it bums me out. And looking at it from the outside, I genuinely think that Ethan Klein is someone who has now, as a man who is damn near my age, we're basically the same age. Dog, I swear to God, I took him out before I started filming, just so we're clear. So he is doing this purely because he wants my attention and I'm talking. He's not doing this because he has any kind of needs. He has food, he has water. I'm just talking to you, and so here we are. At any rate, Ethan Klein has low self-esteem now, still, just as he did. Enough! No! Go lay down! Go lay down! as a former Ethan Klein fan, it makes me sad to, watch this, because I think that he's got incredibly low self-esteem. I think he's someone who probably has always had incredibly low self-esteem. I think that he probably in his youth did get made fun of a lot, for being Jewish, as much as for his Tourette's or anything else that he may have been made fun of as a teenager. In the time that we were growing up was very much in the South Park Jew jokes, the state of it all. And I think that he carries a lot of that, but also I think a great deal of this is his fucking wife, who is a fucking, like, I'm sorry, man, Ela Klein is not a good person. She's a bad fucking person. She participated actively in this fucking genocide because the shit has been going on, as I've said, for the better part of a century. And so that includes the point at which Ela was serving. This was around the point, I started talking about this earlier and then I fucking trailed off, that I went and visited the mosque. They talked about, Rachel Corrie's parents were there. Rachel Corrie was, killed in the Gaza so many fucking years ago. And this would have been right around the time that Ela was serving. And they, the fucking Israeli soldiers, from what I understand, still make pancakes with Rachel Corrie's face on the anniversary of them running her over with a fucking bulldozer. So, like, that's what we're dealing with here. And to watch Ethan go from, being on the Leftovers podcast with Hasan and having very measured, very reasonable takes, and seeing all of these clips of him be like, well, no, like, I kind of understand where he's coming from there, and having Ela just be like, no! And Ethan just thinking that he can't do better, and, like, watching, going like, oh my god, if I stand up against her, she's gonna leave, she's gonna take my kids, she's gonna take them out of the country. Like, I'm sure that he's crashing out because he's watching his entire life fucking crumble, and he's blaming it all on fucking Hasan Piker, because he can't blame it on his wife, because then he would have to acknowledge what he has gotten himself into. And, like, the fact that she is not willing to budge on this, and he's not willing to stand up and be like, ma'am, you're not, no, go lay down. Thank you. Sorry. Hopefully I'll edit the sound on that, but one never knows. That, he can't push back, because if he pushes back, she leaves. And I think that, as bad as that would be to, like, not have your kids in your home, which, I think is quite frankly the only actual negative consequence, because I think having her out of his life might allow him to, get a little breathing room on sanity. You can't allow yourself and your morals to be corrupted by your partner. If your partner is not doing the right... Yeah, it's sad to see, because I think it purely is because he thinks he can't fucking do any better. Like, really genuinely. Like, I think part of it is the, like, oh my god, I don't want to lose my kids of it all, which, that I think is a justifiable reason to crash out, at least. I don't know that it is a justifiable reason to blame Hasan, but he blames Hasan because, I think like Hasan brought this shit to the forefront and like made Ethan address it publicly. And in the process of that, it exposed Hila's actual views on the shit, because I bet you they just didn't really talk about it. And then once they had to start talking about it, he has to back her, because what the fuck else is he gonna do, right? And so if we're looking at this as the Bad Empanada and Ryan Beard of it all being the, Bad Empanada is suggesting that Ryan Beard has kind of the same attitude toward Ethan Klein. I do not, man. Like, at this point, I don't know. Ethan Klein was someone that I had heard a bunch of shit about before I actually started watching, but I thought that he had learned and had grown. And I'm, someone who has said a million times, like, I think that people can learn and grow. I think we should give people the room to do that. I think that if you try to hold people accountable for shit that they've done years, especially, when we're talking like 5, 6, 10 years ago, that's so bananas, because, if we haven't all changed since 2020, that alone I think is, yeah. But everyone changes, and hopefully everyone grows, and, so I knew about, like, the compilations of him dropping the N-bomb, but I also knew about, like, him being, way understanding for a normie about trans shit, and like seeking to understand things and asking questions, and I got the whole shock jock thing of it all, and it gave me a modern day Howard Stern vibe, and I'm someone who, like, I would skip school and listen to Howard Stern when I would stay home. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's how I discovered the Insane Clown Posse. Like, come on, man. So that vibe was there for me. But at this point, it's kind of like Chick-fil-A. Like, they have said a million times that they'll stop donating to anti-queer causes, and then they do for like a couple of years, but then they start to, and it's the cycle. I don't think that I would be able to buy into Ethan Klein shifting back to being reasonable, like, without a lot of, virtual groveling to his audience. Because it is amazing how over the edge he has gone, and it's really sad to see. But, I don't know, man. I hope that Ryan Beard does not, in fact, make a video about Bad Empanada. I do not think that Bad Empanada is anti-Semitic. I hope that Ryan Beard, at this point, understands the situation enough to realize that being critical of Hamas is missing the fucking point. And that, their statements of being an anti-Zionist are in fact correct. Which I think, I think that's probably true. I think that they probably have learned a lot. And from what it sounds like in the conversation with Bad Empanada, may have picked up a fact or two. But Ryan's is just not giving Bad Empanada any kind of, like, charitability as a person. They it's like, this is a bad guy, and so, like, I'm gonna seek out reasons to confirm that this is a bad guy, despite the fact that the position that he's holding is not actually a bad position. Yeah, because I will agree that anti-Semitism is not a concern for Jewish people in Israel. Much in the same way that racism against white people is not a concern for white people in the United States. It very much is a concern in other places in the world if you are a white person and you are in the non-dominant culture, right? If you are a Jewish person and you are in the non-dominant culture, that may not go well. It certainly does not always go well in the United States. So, you know, bigotry is different because bigotry is systemic and systematic, and the system varies depending on where you're at. There is, you know, the global capitalism, blah blah blah, like but two things can be true at the same time, you know. But I don't know. What do we think? I'm super happy that it seems that there is finally pressure building and that this shit might actually come to an end, because I think we were all losing hope there for a bit. Yeah. If you have stuck it out this long, please please subscribe. I promise I am not gonna disappear for months at a time anytime soon. I won't say I'll never do that again, because at some point I'm sure I will. My mental health does what it does, which is in part the why I have not been about. But we'll get into that at a different time. Yeah, I'm sure this is gonna be rusty as fuck. I so many takes before I got to this one, and I just powered through, and the dog barked a bunch, and I don't know how much editing there has been done. But you know, if you subscribe, it will make my buddy here, CL, very happy. And you know, we want to make CL happy. He is our mascot. I don't know, man. Thank you for sticking with it if you've been here to listen to this. Yeah, please, in the comments, no matter what your opinion is on any of these people, I want to hear about it. Let's chat. Let me get back to talking to people who I don't see in person, because I haven't talked to anyone on the internet in like a long time. So come chat with Draco. I love you. Be safe. Make good choices.